puppies. Alright, let's switch this around. Alright. So, okay. Hey, Vern. I'm waiting for the person I'm going to be talking to get here, and I'm going to just do some more conversations about, why we're here. So there she is. Let's bring camera. There we go. I'm going to shut my
Hey,
notification.
like
I see you.
since like we couldn't figure out how to do it and everything, I don't have like a specific topic in mind or anything. Just go
I
for it.
was
Start
thinking
talking, and
just
I'll respond, whatever.
like
And if
why
people want to
we're
come
here.
and interact, I'll share it. We'll add them too. Fuck it. Huh?
Yeah, I was thinking just why we took up this cause. We're a different age group, probably different background, different place.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd tell a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
So
I'll do the
I was
same when you're
adopted.
done.
Yeah, so I was adopted at birth. I just recently met my biological family. I was raised in a property management company here, and exposed really to a lot of things that morally don't sit well with me. And I've spent a lot of time trying to work the system in a small localized sense. How do we keep rents down? How do we get people
Right.
from the homeless shelter back into an apartment? And that was one of my biggest exposures to like problems in society. And that led me to volunteer work. And eventually, I went through a huge rough patch in my life, and that's where my other big push that I care about, the opiate epidemic that really matters to me, like the mental health crisis, and
Yeah.
the more as weird as it is, the more bad experiences I actually had in life, the more it motivated me to get out of that hole and try and change something. And I started to see how there is all these problems in our society. They're all kind of related in different ways, but the biggest thing is they're all tied together. When you start to look at something like homelessness, you see many people are addicted to drugs, many people have mental illness, they're cycling in and out of jail, and it's just this huge messy problem that for years there hasn't been a solution. It's just been like, wow, everything's crazy and messed up, and this yellow vest thing, at first there was Anonymous. I loved Anonymous, but I don't do the computer stuff, so for a
Yeah.
long time it was like, I love that there's people out there fighting for us in the shadows or in the cyber world. And uh, within the last year, I actually met some people locally here in my state that were like anonymous activists. They did the Op Safe Winter, and that was like the coolest thing for me, is when it really started to seem like everything was converging. It was coming off the
Right.
computer screen a little bit, but staying on the computer screen a little bit. And it's been just so great. you know we talk a lot about unity and how we want unity and how we want to bring people together, but we don't talk that much about how it's already happening. To see people with the mask and without the mask, and older people and younger people, all just putting differences aside. Every
Right.
day there's problems, but by the end of the day we've solved them all and moved forward. And
Hmm.
that's a huge motivation for me. And
Yeah.
I've loved meeting you. You've been very inspirational to me. Someone who kind of has that same drive. Like, even if you don't know that I'm there, I'm there. Even if you don't know that I'm watching out for you, I'm watching out for you. And
Yep.
I love having like those people that you just know are always going to have your back and you don't have to worry about that. And like that community that's like growing now with this yellow vest that's spreading off of all these different movements. It's really great, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, let you talk a little bit, you know, what what brought you to the yellow vest movement? I mean, you're anonymous, so you know you must have been active in this regard for a while. So what brought you here? It might be frozen. You there?
Oh,
There you
I
are.
can't add him.
What?
Is he here?
I'm here.
Well, where's Joe?
He's watching. I don't know if I can add another person.
Okay, I can't.
Let Joe know
Uh,
after you talk, you can get off and I can bring Joe on. We'll just take turns.
okay. Hurry. Okay, there he is. Okay. I wanted to add you because I kept getting notifications. But yeah. Hold on. I can't. It's stuck. Oh my gosh. No, it won't. It keeps lagging. It won't.
Yeah, I can add him on, but I can only
Go
have
ahead,
one
add
person
Joe.
on at a time.
So it's not stopped. Add him.
I'd have to take you off. All
What
right.
in the heck?
I'll have to take you off to get him on. All right. Oh, Kitty, get out of there. All right. Approve. Bring Joe on. Getting Joe on the camera.
Stay on,
Just
stay on, stay on. Wait, did
I
she
can't
get off?
I can't have both of you on at once. It'll only let me do one at a time.
Oh, really?
We'll just switch back and
Hey,
forth.
what's
That's all right.
up? All right, that
What's up,
sounds
man?
cool. We gotta figure out because I've seen people do that. I've seen people do that where they have three.
Yeah, I don't know if they might be using another software or something. But yeah, so I guess
Mhm.
we were kind of just talking
Hardware
at
too. Hardware,
first
the
about.
phones too affected a lot too.
Yeah, but so I guess we were kind of just starting kind of free form. What brought us to the yellow vest? You know, we all kind of seem to have our own history and activism and our own issues that, you know, really matter to us. And it seemed like we have a great motivated group of people. I see you out there very active. I'd love to know what brought you to this idea over any other.
Well, I remember just like when I first saw what was going on in France. Like this is in December, early December. I was just blown away by the integrity
Yeah,
of these people. They were standing up. And like I just saw and it's funny because like people say like there was a lot of left and right. There really wasn't. They were overall those people were so united over the overall agenda of fuck these rulers that are tyrants and tyrannical over all of us and forcing us to basically live on their terms and their interests, the foreign banks, and they're these elitist pricks who basically have a huge say in our life and our foreign relations with other nations. And too much stuff is information is kept secret from the public, and we're able to handle the truth. And so, like when I saw also too when with anonymous and just people that like for me, it's like I always felt like what whistleblowers were doing too was like I saw the heart of truth coming into people and these people taking the streets and just being like no more of this shit, none of this.
right. You know, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, as trying to do, you know, journalism or truthing or media or whatever you want to call it, you know, the best advice I kind of got from anyone this week was the most important thing anyone can do to grow this movement is share the truth. That, you know, one of the biggest problems in our society is the hidden information, the things we don't know or that we're lied to, or, you know, the parts of society that are more of an illusion than anything else. And that when people start to see what's really happening behind the scenes, or you know, like how we got here, because there's a lot of people that are just like mind blown, you know, with almost any area of the society. You know, I grew up knowing that everything's messed up. Our society's corrupt. It's screwy. It's bad, and it's there's something about growing up, at least for me here in America, that it was normalized. You know, the weirdest thing about it, spending 15 or 18 years in this America, at least, it wasn't even, it was like par for the course. Like, it's supposed to be crazy. The politicians are supposed to lie. You're not supposed to be able to vote on little things. And it's just like a defiance of common sense. And it's like you go back to our Constitution, and it's like nothing we're even doing is matching this, the supreme law of our country. And that does come back to the rulers. And there's like, I think, a big push too with like the education. Like, how do we teach people like what is actually happening? Because at that point, people will be motivated on their own to do something. How can you know like there's poison in the water and the air and the food and not say, hey, well, cut the shit? Don't kill me. I'm young. Like, I want to live, like, and not just me, like you and all these other people I don't know. Like
And all these
that's,
children that are being born with autism and disorders that are
yeah.
things that just don't make sense, that are affecting brain development of infant childs. And then the idea that we don't want to preserve life and kill life with just basically, what's the word? What do they call it? Just abortions that are for convenience, and not protect life. Like if we, and I look at the Constitution and the way people are standing up right now, it's like they want to pick and choose what rights to stand up for. So it's like we either all come together and stand up for all of our rights, and especially I love the people that are this. I noticed it more recently, like these people who are saying like due process revival, and I see that's like a little clique that's coming up too, where people are like, look, I experienced the judicial system and realize that there's no due process. Truth doesn't get heard. They have these laws dictating these procedures and court, the way the courts handle themselves and carry themselves, and it's ridiculous. And attorneys are frauds too. Like our governments are fraud is a fraud system now too. It's not running on operation of what our constitution is. So like when I go to the streets, I notice that when I talk to people about like, hey, do you believe? The first thing I'll just say is, do you believe in the Constitution of the United States of America? And they're always like, yeah. And it's funny. I was talking about, or like just a while back, about how I was just going out to the street and I found like this group of like young Latina girls that were just like, chilling. They're Hispanic and they're probably wondering, oh no, is this white dude going to talk politics to me? And I sit down, I'm just like, hey, can I ask you something straight up? Hey, do you believe in the Constitution of the United States of America? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, they just had this dialogue that was on film too, where they're like, yeah, we believe in the same thing. And it's like these conversations, you don't hear the media having these conversations where like, yeah, if you're not in prison, you should be able to protect your life with guns. All these things, like things that like people would say like get categorized as being liberal. There's not this massive amount of far left people trying to it also that's why I'm convinced our elections are rigged because it just what I see in person, even though I only get a bit of the picture, I don't think it makes sense. I don't think we're that stupid to believe the far left or the far right on any of their far radical agenda, and that we really have truth. And if we would come back to the Constitution, we become purple. I think we really do reflect a larger majority of 87% of the voting population rather than because I think that's who's dictating these corporate interests trying to manipulate their agendas are like always having their political bargaining chips, and it's the politicians. So think about that. There's always them having their own private interest that is pulling at on each side. But now there's a purpose between for that too, and it's like I obviously it makes sense that the international banks want to see us fall and fuck that shit. We should not have civil war. We should have a revolutionary war and take our country back.
Right now, you say purple. I don't know if you said you started the Rose Party or you're involved in that. From what I understand, looking at the Facebook group, that's based around I think it was a study that said about 85% of Americans will typically agree on almost everything, like policy
That's
wise.
actually
But what,
that That's the material I put out. That's actually I posted. That's one of my
Yeah,
posts. That's something I took that. I took that. The actual research was done by Represent Us, and most people don't even talk about that group. But that's a group of people that have on the state levels and did gerrymandering on their states, and that's a great thing. Even Ronald Reagan was a conservative. Who was like, yeah, in that gerrymandering crap, because that's more better. We should have in
right.
gerrymandering, and keep and people want to get rid of the electoral college. That's a bad idea too. But if we in gerrymandering keep the electoral college, it's a great thing for our republic because we want to restore a republic because that's what reflects the overall interest of our nation as a whole.
Now, so like from what I understand, I just found this Represent Us page a couple days ago, and I thought I understood gerrymandering, and I clearly didn't. So the way the video I watched explained it, maybe you can confirm this. Essentially, gerrymandering, from the way they explained it, was when a politician, it doesn't matter what party they're in, they take office, they can change the outline of the voter district. So now they have more
I'm sorry, and my
people in
phone
their.
keeps on. My phone cut out again. We say that one more time? My phone keeps on.
Yeah, so from Represent Us, the way they were explaining gerrymandering was, any party could do this. When they take office, they change the outline of the voting district. So now they have more people in their party in one district. And then when the federal election happens, they have more votes basically in the electoral college. And they can just keep changing those around to basically either shift it back and forth, or I don't really understand it. Maybe you could explain
And
a little bit
here's the
on.
funny thing. Here's another thing. Is another thing with what their solution is. Like, yeah, that's pretty much you summed up what gerrymandering is in a nutshell. But also think about this. One of their solutions is to change the voting systems. And like think about this. It's like it's you know how our two-party system this is kind of radical to some people, but I think it's great because most people I think also agree with ending gerrymandering. But when it comes to like the electoral college, they also wonder like, why is this two-party system though destroying us so much? And then it's just these people are gone, and like that's why we need to either create a third party that's going to actually represent everything of that real majority, that 80 higher percent number we're talking about, which is like why I say let's go rose, let's go purple. Same thing with yellow. Sorry
Yeah,
about that. These concepts though about unity overall, and also we do want a smaller government. We all want that. These politicians like AOC and who are just dropping these green like this idea of a green new deal, and people aren't aware of like how many jobs she cost New York. She's bunked so many things and said so much of the wrong things at the wrong time, and she's doing a horrible job. And it's like that's what socialism will get you. And when people understand, like too, like if we don't have to worry about all this social agenda law and all these private interests if we just restore the Constitution. And that's really the only way we get what we all want. And it's the best option because people will rally behind that. America has done that in the past, and we will do that again. We can unite over that, especially
yeah,
because like that's what they try and shut out. That's exactly what Facebook wants to get rid of.
it's really crazy. I remember I got thrown in Facebook jail probably like 2 weeks ago, maybe, for just sharing the Declaration of Independence. I'd been very careful to not keep consistently sharing. And I think that might have even been my only post in like 12 hours or something, God forbid. And it just boom, gone, shut down. They're like, and it's like history, and it's like that's the reality of it. Like the Constitution's barely taught in school, and even if there were
So
issues with it, there's no
that they just
dialogue
Nancy
anymore.
Pelosi, they're removing also like because like I think we overall I think when the Constitution speaks about God, he thinks in like even like there's a concept of God in the Bible. I think like obviously it's always been kind of instilled in American culture this light, this spiritual belief of light and good, and we try and be the good over evil. But it's
Yeah,
ironic because we infiltrated by these corrupt criminals who have polluted our real purpose. And so but this crazy thing like Nancy Pelosi wanting to remove God from oaths of Oval Office, or I mean any office, when it comes to any public servant swearing an oath, removing God out of that. And why that's there is because in this life, people they'll get away with evil. But we always recognize that there is a karma, there is a higher thing, there is a higher being that keeps us all accountable, and we answer to that. For all our actions, there is an equal, greater opposite reaction, and that's what we talk about when we talk about God being in that oath. That's what that is. So we don't have to label it thing. That's something we should all come around to. When it comes to
Yeah,
spirituality, because we're uncomfortable now with politics and also religion, and we don't need to be. These are things that used to be comfort like conversations really back in the day because people used to have these conversations and not be at each other's throats. We need to like show people in the streets in person that we can still do that. And that's like
yeah,
really
absolutely.
how that's how we bring
You
a
know,
movement because social
and
media
it,
makes us lazy.
right? I saw this Chinese proverb yesterday. I think it said something like, "There's many roads to the top of the mountain, but the view's always the same." And even this God thing, that's an old one that they've divided us over. Whose God is the right God, and does it even matter?
Yeah.
Like, because if you walk in the light, that's all. That's the whole point of any religion or spiritual belief is just be good.
And that's what
And
that and that's what always gets misconstrued around spiritual beliefs, especially Christians. Like I go to churches now, and I'm just like, man, these Christians are sleepers. Like it's literally, I was in church the other day, and I was telling a friend about it's like I feel like God is telling me to flip this table over right now, and I'm like, am I crazy? And
I've
but
been
I
there,
get
man.
it. I get it though.
And that was,
It's
that was something I grew up on. My dad's Jewish, my mom's Catholic, and the idea, like, so I was raised basically, you can only go to temple. We go to temple Friday night. Your mom still goes to church every Sunday, but you can't go with her, even though you want to go and just see what happens there and like learn and experience it. You just can't go, and it's like, why? Why can't I go? What difference does it make? Like, you're all just teaching people to be good. Like, why can't I go learn from two different people how to be good or get a second opinion? Like a doctor. Why can't I ask a rabbi and a priest and a monk or whatever? Let's get a bunch of opinions. Like, everyone's valid, and and that was like the biggest like eye-opening thing as a kid to see like that was the first experience of this division that didn't make any logical sense. Like, how can you have all of these groups that are about the betterment of the world or people or like love your neighbor or don't steal, don't kill, and the history is laden with these
even
same
Islam
groups
and
killing each
Christianity,
other.
the principles. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a control system, it's an old control system. Looking at history, you go back, religion was the government at one point in time. And I don't know if it's just like more layers of crap they like threw on, or if like people started waking up and they put us back to sleep, but
It
it's
is,
still
you know what
there.
it is though? It's obvious because like you see like when people I always correct people too when they start blaming God for things. And like I don't care what the situation is. I've been in some pretty dramatic situations where I've told some
Yeah.
people this. And I've been like, look, don't blame God for this. And they're like, why? Because I'm like, you know what, especially when it's man. When you're upset over what man is doing or what man is fabricating about God and truth and love and the light or religion, when man corrupts that for his own selfish purpose, whether it's money, believe me, they answer for that in the next life. And absolute truth will always be known. Like nothing in this world that's done in the dark doesn't come to light. And that's the yin yang of it all. And so that's what we're experiencing. Like that's when you see all these corrupt politicians and all these people starting to go down for things, just things coming to light, and it's right in their faces. Darkness is coming to light, or what people have done is in the dark is coming to light, and they got to answer for it, and that's what
Right.
Yellowvest really has to be about. That's what it is. It's the majority. If we are good, we're gonna come together and overtake this evil. If not, well then maybe we deserve to fall.
I can agree with you on that. And it's hard too, because I've spent years, trying to find the light. Then I find the light, and then it's almost like you get depressed because then what do you do? Like you have these like aha moments. You wake up and you're like, oh man, this is crazy. I got to do something. And it's like, where's everybody else? Where are all the other people having these like aha moments? And it's been like years of just almost needing to like numb myself. Like, I went through this long period where it's like I wish the world didn't have to be like this. I can't change it. There's nothing I can do. And it's like almost like it was like a forced acceptance. And like I love the French for however they got this off the ground, because it's I don't know if that there would be enough people to do this if they hadn't put those vests on and just gone out in the streets and just raised some hell.
And I get there's so much perfect symbolism because people are like some Americans were talking trash about it because they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go out there and make myself a target. But that's what these people did because they're like, fuck it. They're like, you're not hearing us. We'll put
We're
ourselves at
already a
risk because
target.
this is how much we care. Yeah, we're already a target, and like that's what I'm saying too. In America, people were like, "Oh, well, we're waiting, we're waiting, we're waiting." I'm like, "No, stop waiting because they already drew first blood, and they're drawing more blood, and this is like now. This is like act now. Our Constitution is dying in front of us. Look what the French are going through, and look at history too.
Right.
I was so what I thought was so beautiful is because what America and France have had this history for ever since we became a nation. They saved us. We're a nation because of France. We have the
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty as a gift of France. It's a reminder of liberty and having each other's backs and standing our ground together against real tyrants. And it's like some people like hate on. I know how I come off because they're like, "Oh, don't you support the police?" I'm like, you know what? I think the police are inherently good, but what's going on because of our evil politicians that are making these laws and their self-righteousness, they're making our cops do very, very bad things, and it just keep getting worse and worse. So I'm disgusted, but it's like I want to save this. I want to save everything. I want to save the police's good name, and the only way we do that is by restoring their honor in the Constitution, restoring that badge, and restoring
Right.
these public oaths. We don't lose our integrity over this because Nancy Pelosi likes to come along and sign a pin with their L fucking Chapo fingers. This fucking criminal. Fuck you, criminals.
Oh God, but yeah, no, and I love it too because I was reading a lot about the history. Before I went down to DC, I was listening to an audiobook that was talking about like the stories of the formation of the Constitution. And during our Revolutionary War, there was a point where they were saying if the French Navy hadn't actually come over here and backed us up, we probably would have lost.
Exactly.
And like
That's what happens. It's like it's also that's what they play out too, and like in basically in fashion, like in the end of the movie, like The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
yeah,
That last scene is the French literally saving our ass. It's
yeah.
it's funny.
And so,
Yeah.
I was talking to one person from the Netherlands too, and he's like, it's repeating itself. The French Revolution happened. The rest of the world joined in. They came, they helped us out. We did it. We made our constitution. We did the thing, and here we are again. France is having another revolution, and the world's just following suit.
And we're looking at what they want to push as a civil war, but we can have a revolution too. That's what Yellow Vest is all about. Unite now, because they really want to kill us all. They want to track us. They want to have military control, and the more things they do, that's why I was so pissed on the little things when I see that they're giving Phoenix PD like sonic weapons, to use in case of protesters, against protesters. I'm like, what
What?
the hell? This is my home. Yeah, like, but they got my Phoenix PD in Arizona has sonic weapons to use in case
Dude,
protesters go. Yeah, sonic
that's
weapons.
not cool. That
Shit's
is like
evil.
not okay at all.
They're not supposed to have
What
these
the
mechanisms to control us like we're cattle. But they're making us cattle.
God?
The same thing with our
Yeah.
telecommunication systems. Everything they want it's outrageous. Granted, we get to choose that whether we want cell phone devices or not. But you know what? We should be able to develop our own technology and have access to make our own means to make sure that we protect our own privacy now. Fuck them
Yeah.
because we all these federal institutions are corrupt. They don't. And
Yeah.
corporations want to be able to manipulate us for our information, and we can't keep track of it. And no, fuck this. It's in the littlest
Yeah.
things, and they con us. Like think about this, even like from the littlest things, when you're surfing on the internet and you click on something that says, "Hey, you do this and you get this gift card," and then
It's always a trick.
but like yeah, but then like look, it's like then you answer these questions, you get this information, and then like they'll rip you off too, because like it's like then like the screen freezes or some shit, and you gave them all this information, but you didn't finish like getting your like $400 worth of information you took your time for,
Oh,
but they
they
still
still got your
your
information.
It still got your info you were putting in there. It's like it's a fucking and granted, most people are like, oh, we'll never do that, but it's like this is not how um businesses are supposed to function and operate, and then commerce. This is the information when it comes to like everything they put down in like the whole process. We gotta say this. I think this should be a part of Yellow Vest too. When you're informed, like legally, like obviously there's little things and small, even to those little clicks. There's like fine print somewhere you don't even know you're agreeing to. That can't be tolerated anymore. I think they
Right.
need to end that. I think that's fraud. I think that's frauding people, and the way that the system is now, because of the same reasons why we have mass incarceration on a criminal level and the civil level. We're strangled by laws and statutes. Most of our laws need to be ripped off the books, not just because they're unconstitutional, but because they're just unethical, or they manufacture fake criminals, or like a number of things. And it's a system that just spending money automatically dispersing things that we just are not even using resourcefully anymore because we are
Right.
so wasteful. This is what
Even
all
the
the environmentalists get. Take care of the environment. Even if what I believe, like, I believe that global warming is bullshit. I really think the evidence actually shows that. But here's the whole thing. It's like you still need to keep air quality clean. Why are they spraying us with this shit? The fuck? Chemtrails? Like
right.
obviously now we know everything. They are doing it. It's like we got pictures of these tubes speeding like these aren't fake. We know this. And it's funny because I still also believe that our president is backing us right now. I think he very well could be holding back the gates of hell
That's
from
the sad thing is like
flooding, flooding on
we've come
America
to a
right now.
place where you actually have to say, I believe the president is looking out for the citizens, but then there's still going to definitely be people who say the exact opposite. And what is that? I was listening to that same book about George Washington, and it said the Constitution was basically written when they talked about the executive branch, keeping him in mind as the type of person that should be a president, approachable, and all of these great things. And nothing to say bad about Trump or anybody else. We have problems with plenty of politicians, but this system this system has created a dynamic where the public can't have faith in the most powerful person in the country, and that's just crazy to me. Like,
You know what I
we
think that
should
is? I
all
think that
know and know,
yeah.
if he's doing this and he's backing us, then we should know. Like, there shouldn't be a question about that. But things are so convoluted that if he is, it can't even be public that he's working for us. And if he's not, then there's still half the population that thinks he is when he's not.
Complicated,
And
isn't
either
it?
way,
Isn't it just that's why they call it the rabbit hole, bro. It's a fucking rabbit hole. It isn't there is a chess game for humanity going on in front of us before our very eyes. So that's why, yeah, when we question everything, it's good. But like, yeah, I do think that the president has the right. I think he's doing the right thing right now, and I hope so. But honestly, if he was doing the wrong thing, I'd jump off the ship so quick. I'd be like, and I think there's a lot of patriots that were really they're to the point they're like, you know what, we want to stand for the Constitution, and anybody that's
yeah,
not, we just they're enemies of the state because they're subverting the Constitution. All these
right.
laws, taking guns and making criminals out of everybody. I was already a manufactured criminal myself, and it's like this shit needs to stop. So, and that's why Black Lives Matter up in the first place. They were screaming about police engagement because they have valid points. They are acting on a subverted civil liberty basis with their policies and a lot of police forces. And then also when it comes to just rights in general, we take away rights. Like I experienced Brady Law just a couple weeks ago over a court hearing over a restraining order, and it's like this is my life rights. And how should any lies that some false victim is making up or just trying to use against me? Because there's horrible people out there. That's why like people were saying like we should not have these laws in the first place because stupid evil citizens will try and use laws to hurt other citizens that they have, tribal little conflicts with, or whatever, children, family court matters, domestic, whatever, just all these things that can play out, or even in the corporate world, businesses, all these things. There's all these. We have this massive the ecosystem that's got all these things with people and environments, and like we have to have a judicial system to handle situations where we focus on real criminals, and we don't do that anymore. And I think that's why we blow all this money, and that's why we don't fund education. So why there was like Red for Ed movement in Arizona and all these things, and where that came from, it's like, well, we're not going to fund education, so why conservatives are like, hey, well, we want to reform education. Well, you don't have a bargaining chip to reform it because you won't get it funded, and you won't get it funded because the private prison industry is trying to make dollars of all these people that we keep in prison. So we want to keep this funded so we can basically have a slush fund into these corporate interests.
Right.
And you know, it's like there's this there's this conflict of interest saying like that's come up in states with private prisons where they're like, you know, we can sue the state when they don't have enough beds full. So now it's like the integrity's all gone. Like that image of Lady Justice being stabbed through the back and dying, keeling over, is like think spot on. So if you can get patriots who care about guns as much as they do like justice, like realize that's what they've done to Lady Justice.
Right. And, you know, like I think about it too, you know, because you know, I spent probably about a year after the last election, really caught up in the mainstream news and, you know, all the gossip and, you know, just that, I don't know the word, I guess psyop would be the best word, you know, that manipulation, using everything you can think of to drive people apart. And, you know, when we get on the president, like, it never once dawned on me that like a lot of the people wearing the hats view themselves as a movement to defend the Constitution. And I never even tried to talk to anybody for like a year about that. It was just like, fuck you,
Isn't
you're an
that funny?
asshole.
That's like,
And that,
and why is that kept from people's
yeah,
minds? Because it's like I
yeah.
swear to God, bro, I feel like I discovered like the liquid,
But
like like wake up
but see that
gold. The wake up gold is just
but
talk
see
to
the
people
thing,
about the
yeah,
Constitution, and then you're like, holy
yeah.
fuck, we yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like, and it wasn't even just them. It was the left too. It's like, fuck you guys too. Like, what the hell is going
Immigrants,
on
like
here?
the legal immigrants, they agree with it. Like everybody agrees with it. That's why
And
like our
the,
founding fathers were brilliant.
so in a way, it's almost like this well-oiled machine gets citizens to blame other citizens for the problems in society, yet none of these laws being passed are being voted on by citizens. So
Boom. Yes.
here we are,
That's what I've been
and
for the last 2 years. I've been saying that. And people don't get it when I say the system manufactures criminals and the media is manufacturing a civil war that doesn't exist.
yeah, and it's like it's their end game. It's not ours. Like we don't want a war. We don't want to kill each other. We don't want to hate each other. Like, and it's happening because like so many people are being tricked through so many different avenues, like the Facebook, the all these half true articles or manipulative articles or people presenting opinion as
Here's the
news
whole
or
thing.
fact.
Actually, here's the whole thing. I actually realize this too. Most of actually the problem is not on social media. Most of the problem is the mainstream media. Most of the solution, even though like, see, here's the thing with social media, is when an article's wrong, usually it doesn't take long for you to see like either a new comment of somebody that proves it's wrong or somebody that knows it's wrong, or maybe it's half right, but some like people will start talking about what's right in the article, and then you see the conversations. So that becomes more true than the mainstream media, who's only trying to do a far left or far right instigatory,
Yeah,
informative dissertation, whatever you want to call it. The real truth is actually on social media, especially when you go to anonymous media and you have the ballsy information out there. And even though some of it's so obviously fake or warped or even so one-sided, like radical itself, but you get the find you're able to discover real truth on social media. On mainstream media, when you rely on just that, you're fucked. You become the
yeah,
the the robot.
yeah. There's a lot of words for it, but that's kind of I experienced that. You know, getting there was a point in time. It was like right before 2016, and like probably through a year after that, like being so motivated, like, all right, like things need to change, like it's time that the people do it, like I need to get involved. And all the way through 2018, it's like you get pulled over here, you get pulled over here, this group, that group, this is going on, that's going on. And you know, after 2 years, like literally nothing was accomplished. Like it's just all these good motivated people being dragged all around and distracted and turned against each other, and it's not one source to blame. I mean, it's one group doing it, obviously, but you can't really blame just the TV, or just the articles, or just Facebook, because it's complicated, and it's been happening so long. They depend on that complexity to confuse people. And like, I didn't real I knew how screwed up things were, but it's like realistically, it wasn't until this like convergence of these movements and this yellow vest that it was like people are out there trying to like help people understand, like show them the light, like this is really what's going on, like I
Yeah.
can prove this, like this
Yeah,
is
like, hey,
fact.
do you know that people are being murdered in France? Like when I was
Yeah. And like now it's not even
Yeah,
now
one
it's
time I went out to the club district and I was just walking up to people. Sorry, my phone spazzes weird right there, but
no, you're
I was
good,
just
man.
going up to people like, "Hey, do you know what's going on in France?" And I was wearing the yellow vest and everything, and my hoodie, and I was all yellowed out. And they're like, "Whoa, what's going on in France?" Some of these people are drunk, but I'm like, the people of France are being murdered by their own government. You have no idea what the mainstream media is lying to
Right.
you. You're just like, whoa, fucking. It was funny, dude, because I was on one. I was even out like at one point I got so pissed. I was just like in the street. I realized I was like, there's a better way to doing this, but it was just one of the nights I was on one. But I was like waving my vest and I was just like, fuck the banks, fuck them, like, fuck the New World Order. We're being lied to. Fuck these assholes. Like, I was just on one, dude. But it's
Yeah.
like, you know what? One day people will all start doing the same shit because when they realize the truth, that's what you'll get to a point where you're just like, this shit's outrageous.
Yeah,
You
it's
can't
like
stand for this.
you almost like can't unsee a lot of this stuff. It's like that moment where it's like
Yeah, it's
bad
traumatizing.
bad becomes like borderline, like we're on the precipice of the end of the world bad, like like you can't
Yeah, and
even
then they label
comprehend,
us
like, and it,
mentally ill because of these
yeah.
also these thoughts.
And it's like the reality of like I heard about chemtrails years ago, and it was like very vague, like nobody's telling you, oh well, they're spraying this, they're spraying that. I found out recently they're spraying lithium in the air. Like lithium, like that will kill your kidneys. Like, why are you spraying that in the air? Like, for what purpose at all? And like I found out in 1986 in my state that 50% of our state's drinking water comes from this one big lake. And they actually had to fight the people off from making a nuclear waste plant right next to where the drinking water comes from for the whole state. And it's still, I think it's actually sitting out in either Arizona or California right now. They still don't know where to
Yeah,
put it.
fucked up, dude. It's just like and like
Yeah,
all
we're,
the
like
stuff that does get validated like on those things, it's just outrageous.
Yeah, it's like we're all literally paying to store all this nuclear crap from these weapons they're building and not even using because they can't dump it anywhere. It's like, how about you just stop making this shit? Like, we
Yeah,
probably
we got
bought
enough
the
to kill
nuke.
ourselves over, you
We
know?
probably we're paying for these weapons. Then we're paying you to just store them somewhere because you can't throw them away. We're paying military to guard them because obviously you don't want people to get their hands on a nuke. And it's just like,
Yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah.
and you just keep tracing this stuff back, and it's like, holy crap, like, wow. Like sonic weapons and the police, like laws being passed to like eliminate constitutional rights, and it's like, man, I thought there were a couple people taking kickbacks, and this guy might be a dick, or she might be, rude
Oh,
sometimes,
and
like,
then and then Uranium One happens, and we're just like, holy fuck! Because you know what, like I see about like what's very obvious about Uranium One, because when people are like still supporting Hillary, that's when I'm like, you guys are so lost. Like I'm like just because I would be like like people that still like don't get Obama and what Uranium One was, and it's like think about this. They sold shares of America's nuclear uranium to Russia, our number one kind of instigator, kind of enemy, sometimes ally, whatever. It's our the guy across the river who just don't like us. The the neighbor, and so we got this shaky history with Russia, the Cold War, all this history, and we gave them why see here's the thing. That uranium from our nation, that's actually a defense for us the people. That's military. That
Right.
belongs to us. These things can't be when they're made in secret. This secret that broke out, these people are traitors. They betrayed. They sold out American material. They didn't have the public's consent to do this. They never had to do this. And also, you're gonna give them our uranium that comes from our weapons. Last I checked, also too, we know from like even like the littlest things, uranium can be traced. That's one of the ways that we know that when countries are manufacturing their own weapons and who has weapons from who, is because we can trace the uranium where it came from to the nuclear weapon if a nuclear weapon is ever detonated. So if we got
That's
a share and
crazy.
they're using our uranium, they could basically have a nuclear bomb that I can't believe what the fuck I'm talking about. It's just on a fucking lie, but they could have a nuclear bomb that is has the fingerprint of United States uranium. Remember that movie Sum of All Fears
Oh
where
my
they
God,
did
yeah.
that because they discovered the uranium that and then it was like, oh, they're like, who's the uranium from? Who did this? Who did this? Who's responsible? They're
And
like,
see, like, I
it's
didn't
us.
know that, but with the history of all these false flags, it's like that makes me even more scared than just like, okay, Russia's gonna blow us up. Like they've normalized that. Like, so like
I
plenty of
don't care about the
people.
false flags. Just, think about this. If we
Yeah,
there, you know how you stop a false flag is
yeah,
what Chris Hill is saying. This is like why our next Yellow Vest, everything Yellow Vest should be about these people, the militia, and also them because they're the ones who want to protect us, the people. So if we
right.
show up, there ain't gonna be no false flags when militia are protecting us. There's gonna be security. There's gonna if anyone who is trying to try and do something funny to hurt a civilian. They're not gonna there's gonna be too many armed constitutionally armed people standing. That's what Yellow Vest also needs to be too. People need to see that. There ain't no false
Oh yeah.
flags. False flags is an excuse. False flags is another media made up lie to stop us, the people, from going to the streets like we should. I've lost people. I've had people fall off the mast because they always think about the same thing. You want to protest? What if there's a shooter? Blah, blah, blah. Shut up. That's the fear. That's the fear stopping you from doing everything that your mind is telling you should do, but you're stopping because you're freezing. You're freezing because literally that your response in your brain is used to telling you like you're supposed to fight or flight. Your fight or flight response. Well, there's
Yeah.
also freeze, and that's what the media wants you to do. They want you to freeze. They don't want you to fight, and they don't want you to. And then if you run, they're like, oh, basically, we'll chase them down, shoot them dead. That's the end of the story. They're not worried about us because we're just that.
Right. But
So.
yeah, no, it's crazy, and the reality, and like the more I jump down these rabbit holes, the scariest thing for me is like I still don't see the bottom. Like I don't know where the bottom of this hole is, and and I don't even know if
Right,
I
you get
want to
enough.
know where it is. Like we're at the point now where it's like this is what they want to do and
It's
they're trying to do or they've almost done. And it's like to me this vest or this movement, like what we're doing right now is like the only way we're getting out of this hole. Like we're all down here. Like the NWO is already
there's
happening. Like
no
people are
getting
already
out.
dying.
You're here
Yeah.
to die, bitch. Like you're
Like
about
and
to.
to be a little
Welcome to the jungle.
metaphorical, like think about it. You
Yeah.
dig far enough down this hole, it's probably pitch black. The only way you're getting out is with a light. Like you need to see something. You need to like shine light in that darkness and find a way out. Like climb back up. Like that's to me, that's what we're doing. We're
It is.
deep down in this hole and we need to like
All
find
those
our way out.
synchronicities. Too many things come together.
Yeah.
Like all of us, how this happened, everything. It's the world, everything. Too many synchronicities. That's why I'm such a believer in like, hey, God's got a purpose. God's in all of this too, bro. It's like, why do we keep God in these O's? Because like, there's a bigger purpose than us humans. When we like to get depressed and curse God and say, look at all this mess we're in, and blame
Oh
something
yeah.
that we got can't see. Well, there's a bigger purpose for everything, and I think we'll overcome. I really do. I think this is really what we're really up against evil, and
Right.
if good's gonna overcome, we're gonna overcome, dude. Because this is probably our last chance in history, is what I really think it is.
That's the way I see it. I I mean obviously I don't think the people behind the scenes have any intention on killing themselves. They They've got their underground
Yeah, and here's the whole
bunkers.
thing. Is also here's the whole thing is they have underground bunkers. They actually have speed rails, and we know this for facts too. They have an
Yeah,
underground tunnel system. There is a whole underground world under the United States. We know this too. And so like yeah, if they wanted the nuclear whole thing, but also I don't see the fucking point to that too, dude. I don't see that
no,
as being in game. And the only thing I think that's why I think there's a sinister thing. Like when I believe in like the story that's kind of in the Bible, like this destruction, this ultimate destruction. If there's true darkness, the true darkness probably delights in that ultimate destruction. And
right.
we gotta fight every evil, every little corner we
Oh
have
yeah,
to, and that's
and like
we need our people.
one
We need to stand
one
up.
person they directed me to like the Georgia Guidestones, and I think I don't remember the number, but there's a number on there like if the whole world's ever destroyed, this is how many people. There should never be more than this many people on Earth.
Oh,
And
I actually have that picture of those two stones in my phone.
yeah, so
Yeah, I
like
know exactly. It's in like a
to
way
me,
to and it's in several language on how to rebuild a better
yeah,
society.
I don't
Yeah,
think they
fuck.
want to destroy the world or kill everyone, but I think that's their plan. I think they want to just dwindle the numbers down. Like that this is the perfect society. Like now we can live the way we want to live. We already have all the stuff, and you know, and that's the piece that I'm missing. I don't know what their end game is other than just evil and destruction, and it's like I don't really want to find out. And and if I do, I'd rather find out that they wanted to do it before they did it than live through that. Like and leave
Yeah.
that for future generations because they're not going to kill themselves. They're trying to change society and the world into what they want it to be. And that's going to be a hell of a lot worse than it is right now.
Hey, bro,
Yeah.
you just like piece the ultimate. That's pretty much what it comes down to. That's the puzzle right there. That everyone wants to be like, well, why? There's if you like their questions to all their lunatic reasons why. There you go. Joe and Adam just pretty much said it all right there in our little broadcast right there. So
Yeah. I don't
we need
know.
to share the fuck out of this because it pretty much sums it up right there. Like there's a what's it called? A motive behind everything, and even like JFK said, bro, nothing is just happens. Everything's made to happen.
Yeah. And to go a little spiritual again, I've done a lot of reading about how, like the law of attraction, like we can create our own reality. And like I love thinking on my own about like the more people that get involved in this, like globally, like if the whole world, like all the citizens stand up and all try and just make a good, like bright, loving world, then how could that not happen? That small number of evil people couldn't possibly stand a chance because we can make that. Like we are capable of that. And it
And
doesn't
you know
even
what,
need to
Adam? I
be.
just realized.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Is Philip wanted to come on, or wasn't somebody else want to come on?
I don't know. I think Jay wants to do one on Wednesday. Um,
Does Jay
Other
or any of them
people,
want to come on? Because I know we were talking too long, but if they wanted to come on too, let's see if they want to come on.
yeah. Does anybody else want to get on the camera right now? I know Jay. We planned for Wednesday. Um, I don't see anybody else saying they do. Um,
Mm.
we got some comments.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah. Oh, great, Dan. Awesome, Dan. So we're streaming now everywhere. Um, but yes. We can keep going. This is a pretty good talk. But yeah, like, I guess from like the spirituality sense, like making the world, like creating reality, I, I was watching, I guess the best way to phrase this, I was watching this video from, it was an Abenaki man doing a TED talk, and he was talking about like the idea that the world or is meant to run on love and like it's supposed to be good things and bright and happiness and
I think that was
essentially,
basically that was like the teachings of Jesus is what I got from my spirituality growing up as a kid.
yeah, and
Is
that's
that
like the root of existence. Like what we're supposed to be doing is loving people
love
and like
cures all.
making the world better. You know, in my Jewish upbringing, it was tikkun olam, like the betterment of the world, or to do a mitzvah. Like every day, you should just do a good thing or help a person. Like put that back out
Yeah.
into the world. And you know, like there's like billions of people on the planet, and just imagine if every person starts committing every day to just be light and be love and go just
Yeah.
do
That's how
something nice.
it's just like when
And
we rebuild community, bro, like that's electrifying. Is and it's funny because like it's simple as like when people do say that when like I remember seeing one of those memes where it was like turn off the TV and love your neighbor.
yes,
Changes everything.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that's the basic thread, and you know, in like the sake of the idea of like reclaiming humanity or society, like if you know, regardless of what religious upbringing you had or what country you came from, if that was really like, and I think most people were taught that before anything else, like be nice to your friends and share, respect your
Yeah.
elders, and all of these like important morals like
I
that's what
think
we're
people
reclaiming.
in poverty don't
Yeah,
get that the same. I think people, that's why when people see inner cities the way they are, when they see abuse in homes or people don't have money, and that I see you see that more because those people don't get more as much attention as a lot of us did. And that's why like it's like even though I like me personally, like my walk, like I had some issues with substance abuse and I was incarcerated and jailed. I had some hiccups, but I was raised great. Like I was raised by wonderful
yeah,
parents and I still had like some attributes that made me who I am that even like when I hit these bumps, like I'm still overcoming. But it's like I think about people though who are in the worst situations because I've seen firsthand what it's like because I've lived on both sides of the tracks. You know, I've
oh
come
yeah,
from both sides, and I just know that it count like quality relationships that makes all the difference. And so when people don't get that because they're surrounded by people who also never had quality relationships for generations of living in poverty. It's the same thing over and over. That's why it's hard for people to get out. But you do see people get out and they're like, "Oh, what was the difference?" It's like that person, like I know why. That person along their growth at an early age discovered the importance and was able to find quality relationships and people that didn't quit on them either.
yeah,
When
you
we
know,
start
and
quitting on each other, we miss the whole moments where we're supposed to feel uncomfortable. When we're supposed
yeah,
to have awkward growing moments and make mistakes. We're supposed to grow that through it together. And most and that's why you see American culture, everyone's like, oh, cut that bitch off, or just like, hey, like, oh, I'll cut a person out of my life so quick, you know, blah blah blah. You're not supposed to do that. You're also
no,
not supposed to fuck each other over though, too.
yeah, you know, we're supposed to learn from each other. You know, like I've seen a lot of people talk about this, like the beauty of the First Amendment, and the proof that we
Yeah.
haven't lost it yet is the fact that we still are able to disagree, and if we so choose, have conversations about that. And you know, like to me, I think there's a huge element of like preserving like the good sides of humanity, the parts of us that can have those conversations and not lash out or cut
Yeah.
people out of our lives or like sever that piece that
Yeah.
connects us all. And you know, it's not just about
Constitution does that.
yeah, and to me too, it's not just about hating the elites or hating the deep state or ending the corruption. It's also about what are we going to put back? What are we trying to save in people or reawaken in people? And there's a lot about this like this consciousness evolution. You know, whether that's intentional or deliberate or it's just happening. That is like an addendum that's just coming out of this that like the more people learn and are you know finding that the only way we're going to fix these problems is by rekindling communities and connection
Yeah.
we're just inherently moving back into the light. I don't think you can do this and not move back into that light.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny too. I think that's why we like so much like what I think about like that was like spoken about in like the Bible what I picked up on too and I see is like an example of our world is right now, dude, is just like there's a separation. There's like a culling effect and like there's like this verse in the Bible when it talked about like when things are falling apart, you know, basically it'll be like in the times where, you know, it's like a this parable that was about the wheat being separated from the chaff, and it's like we
I
know that
remember that one.
there's real good and evil, and like real evil we know just because of the world we live in, dude. Real evil doesn't have a purpose in this world. It needs to be stripped out. It needs to be cleansed. It needs to be wiped off. Like, and we're talking about the worst of the worst of the worst. These things that we despise, the corrupt, the people who are take delight in destruction of innocence, people who don't care
And
about life and liberty. And it's like I see that happening. If anything, what Yellow Vest really is under the deepest aspects of it, the deepest motives I think Yellow Vest is really standing up for, it's people of goodwill standing up against true evil and saying no more. You know,
amen. Yeah, that,
it's
I don't really know what
we need
that.
to take
Yeah,
we need to remove the evil out. That part of the chaff of the wheat, it's useless. We need to take those fuckers out because
right.
that's what the real problem is.
Yeah, and it's and it's
Corrupt.
funny too because we're so quick to cut each other out of our lives or to separate ourselves from each other when we're the ones we need. And like what like kind of like what you said, like we need to cut them out of our lives. We need to cut them out of our society, and we need to take our power back
I
from them.
just wait. Somebody commented and said the middle class, but was he? Wait, what? They're trying. Oh yeah, though. Yeah, they are trying to wipe us out. The middle class. I
Yeah,
would concur. I think,
yeah,
but also that it's like they're trying to keep also the largest group that's are living in poverty. They're trying to keep them from even going into the middle class because you know what if people what happens when real people get out of poverty and join the middle class is just because of how America is right now. We're almost an oligarch. What happens when people get in the middle class? They actually realize they will have more rights, and that's kind of fucked up. But also,
right.
where all of our rights are under threat right now, and they want to keep the the largest, weakest people with the least amount of rights, even the middle class. They want to keep us held back, and keep us restricted, whether it comes to firearms and what we can do, and our lawyers. They want us to the lawyers that we have to whenever we do have a problem that's legal or whatever. They want us gaslighted and to play by these set of rules that are really a fraud system. Stupid.
Yeah, and
That
it
this is
you
this
and
they
that
need to
kind of
pay though. This is gets thing as the point. It's like they need to pay. They just need to pay. We need to go to the streets and make them pay. We can have our own courts. We don't need their courts. We can hold our own courts. We can make the police join us because we're gonna be saying like, "Hey, your badge is supposed to represent this, and if you don't do this, then this makes you a hypocrite, and we're not basically consenting to
yeah.
you enforcing us anymore." So we serve the police. That's what Chris Hill did on basically to the politicians in the Trump administration and all the governors on Washington, D.C. So now, if we just do March 23rd, it's always going to have a next step. It's going to keep growing no matter what. We just feed the fire, bro, because it's funny because even though QAnon, people talk crap about QAnon, what's happening right now, bro, is we are becoming QAnon and what QAnon was probably intended for. QAnon was getting the people of goodwill to rise up and say this corruption is over. We will not tolerate this anymore. Like people who
Right.
really who believe in their oaths that they made to their nation and their country are ready to be like, okay, we're ready to die.
And the coolest
Unless
thing
this
too is
gets fixed.
and it's not even just that one group either. Like QAnon, the Patriots, the Yellow Vest, and so many other movements that are all echoing that same notion. Like we together as one are in essential. We're invincible. Whatever happens, if we unite and stand for what's good, I mean, I guess we could fail, but I'd rather fail trying than fail sitting at home ignoring it. Like I can't I don't like I can't stand to see people freezing out in the cold on the street and here the people are dying outside of hotels like because nobody would let them in at night and it's like
Yeah.
have you no decency, like the amount of money people make and they can just turn their back on another human. Like I
Yeah.
get that, there's
I call it the
way more.
Snapchat culture. Because
Yeah,
like you know what I noticed like on Snapchat culture, like it's all the same thing, same crap, where it's just almost everything is people up in the club trying to pop bottles and just force sex and media and garbage music and lyrics that really dehumanize human beings. Like it's that's why I get
yeah,
so struck on like, the mainstream media does it, the NFL does it with their little gladiators and the sports franchises. Like literally, we are the Roman Empire, and they want us to give us paying attention to the truth. That's for sure.
yeah.
And that's the
And
population. Like think about it. The target population we want to go to is like obviously the Trump supporters, like and all these people too. But like we want to say like this needs to be about the Constitution. It's not about Trump. It's about us, the people. And even Trump says that over and over and over at his rallies. He's like, "This is not about me. This is about you, the people." And but I also think it's
yeah,
funny because most of the people sometimes don't act like that. And it's like, all right, like when it comes to yellow vests, I'm like, hey, we need to show up and blah 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 blah. And people were talking about like MAGA hats or whatever. I'm like, fucking leave it at home because I realized too, it's like let Trump lifted up yellow vest in France. Nobody in France was yelling wearing a MAGA hat, even though there were people on the streets saying, we want Trump, but they did it all. No one was wearing any, even though it's France, I guess that's kind of irrelevant. But like think about this. It's like yellow vest should be the
right.
moments where like you leave your MAGA hat at home because it's not about Donald Trump, it's about us, and he's going to lift us up now in our
Yeah, but like,
movement.
see,
So let
honestly,
him lift
I
us up.
I don't even care anymore, because at the end of the day, like if I'm going to enforce that Constitution, if you want to support the president, then support the president. I don't care because at the end of the day, the only way I am going to find
Like,
common ground with you is by, in a sense, agreeing to disagree. Like the hat's
but
irrelevant.
you'll
Like,
never disagree. If somebody actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if somebody does
no, you're
disagree on
good.
the Constitution, then just be like, bye, fine, you
Yeah.
don't
Oh
get it.
yeah.
Like I
No,
can
I
only
mean on
get
the
it.
hat, like on the hat,
Yeah,
and that was the
yeah.
coolest thing for me in DC was to actually have like red vests and yellow vests together. I mean, we had plenty. I'm sure there's plenty of things we all disagree on, and some more we agree on. And at the end of the day, we got stuff done because nobody bitched once about whether or not someone had a red hat on or why are you wearing a yellow vest instead of a red one. And it was like, hey, let's have conversation. Like, what can we agree on here? Like, we're not going to get anywhere until we're like a solidified movement. How do we get to
And
that
then
point?
yeah,
You know, it,
and when you do that, mainstream media never wants to show those moments. Like they won't
yeah.
show when Black Lives Matter and like a Trump rally group are like meeting together and coming together. It's like they never show those moments ever.
Yeah, and it's like, like I get like that hat's been stigmatized. I don't need to go into blaming the president or
Okay.
blaming individuals
One second,
because it
I just gotta
is,
set the phone. I'm still here, but I'm setting this
oh, you're
phone down
good.
really quick.
And like for me, it's like I just look at it as irrelevant. The media definitely uses that topic a little bit to divide us and keep us fighting. But in many ways, I just don't want to get after somebody for something so small, like we talk policy or we talk like a social issue, you can have a conversation about that. And even with the hat, like if you can find a conversation that's beneficial, great. But if we're just arguing about what clothes you're wearing, we're not
It never goes
producing.
nowhere.
Yeah, we're not producing anything. We're not having a dialogue that anyone is learning anything from, and we're not
I think
doing
less
anything
and
that's,
less people are doing that.
yeah. And that's, even you come back to the media, I don't even know how much that is happening because I have yet to talk to anybody anywhere that is really unreasonable. With the select few, trolls on the internet that might not even be a real person, I I don't think there are that many people that are willing to go out and get in the streets that also aren't willing to try and have a civil conversation. We've seen
Yeah,
plenty of
it's so
those.
true.
Yeah, like there's been plenty of those protest, counter protest thing, but and my wife always says like the 10-year rule. You wait 10 years and a lot of things start coming out that like this isn't how you thought it was, and how many of these protests like had paid people there to make it appear a certain way? Or, if one group shows up and attacks another group, is that even the group whose like outfit they're wearing, or is that just actors? Like, we don't know. Like, when you turn the TV on, there is no more guarantee that that's like real. Like, I mean, it's real people, it's going on, but is it what
Yeah.
they're saying it is? And that, like, to
Yeah,
me, like,
it's funny. That's why I always wondered about when Antifa first came up. Why I was like, wait, why are we so quick? Like there were laws. Remember when there was like
yeah,
people in the Patriot movement were supporting laws against Antifa, and they were saying that these laws would stop anybody that's wearing like a face shield and protesting. They could punish them with up to 15 years in prison. And I'm like, why are we gonna create a law that would affect us just as much as them? Like you're falling
yeah.
for the bullshit.
And it's like, and to me, it's like, and I'll tread in some rough water here. It's like, I'd even fathom, with these same conversations, I can't find, deep in my heart that if somebody is that passionate about stopping fascism, why they wouldn't want to have a
Exactly.
conversation with other
That's what I
people
said too.
who don't like
They
fascism,
pol- and,
like
and then
or
also it's like,
racism,
hey,
or
it's like the mainstream left media, the media that the right, like when my people were like, I was like, obviously there are no 3%ers or patriots who are gonna watch NMSNBC or any of these companies just bash us and talk shit. So the information that they're relying on and they're paying attention to also is like basically saying, all these horrible things about Donald Trump that are exaggerations and media manipulations, just like as much as any other side. But it's like, no wonder they're thinking this guy's a fascist because they're hearing this, but it's like this makes no sense. It's like we are all being indoctrinated to be at war with each other, but when we get in person, we probably be like, yeah, fuck a fascist, fuck a
yeah,
tyrannical asshole. Yeah, and I bet you Antifa would probably be like, a lot of them too would be like, yeah, restore the Constitution.
yeah, because it's like, it's just that simple. Like,
It
get
is
the
that
hate out of
fucking
the world.
simple.
It's really simple, basic things that like we all generally agree on, and
Yep.
you start to look at these movements, like people can
And
put on that
yeah.
uniform and carry that flag, and now you're blaming one group for this, and maybe they were like none of them were even in that group. Maybe it was all actors, or maybe it did happen and it's all out of context. But to me, I can't anymore ever judge a person unless I have asked them the questions for myself. And you know, I can't judge people anymore. Like, that is not my place as a human being. Like, I'm
Yeah.
responsible for myself and my
Yeah.
actions, and that's the same for everyone. And if we're all going to get out there and say stand for what is good or end evil or any of these other evil creations of man, I can't logically see why people wouldn't just stand on, like, if we're all good people regardless of what uniform we wear or vest or banner or flag,
I'll,
why
I'll
wouldn't
I'll
we
show you
just
right now.
hold hands and fight them together?
I'll give you like one of the biggest examples. Here's an example that like you see this done over and over again. Like for instance, all the people would agree on the Constitution, like yeah, restore this. But here's the like example number one of people why we will not unite on like an example on a political issue. Um, infants, abortion. Most of us all would agree when it's a medical necessity to save a mother's life, absolutely a doctor should perform an abortion to save the mother's life.
Yeah,
That's not even a pro-life agenda. But yet that's not being done by our legislatures. But really they shouldn't really have to create laws in the first place because doctors should know how to do this because of their ethics and their Hippocratic oath. They shouldn't be killing babies when they're fine and they can be born naturally and be okay in the first place. So it's like in our Constitution, it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So when we say we want to preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they're saying, oh, yeah, well, also freedom. But then, oh, what about the freedom for a mother to choose abortion? Well, then we're saying, look, if she didn't want to have a child, like all the options there are to not have a pregnancy, if you resort every option and you still get pregnant, you chose to start this process by the first time you took your free will and you chose to take an action that can create a human life, you should take responsibility for that life.
Right? You know, and that, to me, that topic is probably the hardest one, because that's not as simple as like left or right, Trump or Obama, or Trump or Bernie, or whatever. That, like, there's
But I
so
think the
many
moral,
variables.
like, if you want a moral solution, I think there is an obvious one. And the way you stop all the arguments is like you realize, all right, scientifically, what we know today, second and third term abortion is wrong. It's murder. It's murdering an innocent child. The child is actually going through excruciating pain and trauma. It's disturbing. Now, first term abortions, like, think about this. The infant develops its heartbeat around 3 weeks of development. A lot of things happen after 3 weeks. It's a good benchmarker to say, look, if you can't get an abortion by the time we can detect a heartbeat like this, you probably shouldn't get one. And it
Right?
preserves life at the same time. It's like and then also in circumstances of rape or crime, most times an abortion is not necessary, because if a woman's really raped and she goes right to the hospital, they can stop the pregnancy right there and then.
Yeah, I didn't know that. 'Cause
So there's all these things that, like, the mainstream media won't talk about, these inside issues. And then there's also the issue when it comes to pro-life. It's also about children that they know, because when they do ultrasounds, they're able to tell if a child may have developing Down syndrome. Now, Down syndrome is a special needs. But they're beautiful people. There's also a far left agenda that would say, hey, let's put people to death who are mentally ill, who can no longer feed themselves. Just let them starve
yeah,
themselves out in
that,
healthcare homes. Because then
that,
now we're not preserving life, and it's a waste of energy, and they can't function. And because they're not viable on their own, they should be put to death. And that's the same argument they tried to make about baby embryos. Oh, they're not viable, so it's not really life. But, like, oh, what about a person in a coma? If a person's in a coma, they're alive. They're not technically viable on their own, but they could come out
right?
of it. We
Yeah,
preserve life and liberty. We know the real
yeah.
solutions, but they won't talk about it.
And, like, I've always been, very much pro-choice. And admittedly, I'm a man. I don't carry the baby, so that's kind of always been my standpoint. But
I know, but
I
also think about this. Think about this. Like, let me play a devil's advocate. Think about this. Like,
yeah,
that's what you're told yourself in your head. But also think about this. It's not your body, but just remember, part of your body is still involved in that process and was used to create that child. Half of that child is you. That is your body. Just because it's not attached to you, don't just also discredit the fact that there's something spiritual about that. You helped create
oh
life.
yeah, no,
You aren't.
and that's
You
why I
shouldn't be
say.
kicked out of the. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I say that, like, really, of all those, like, hot button topics, this is the hardest one, because it's like, I can totally sympathize with, like, well, what if I want the baby and she doesn't? Or, the argument that that's a life too that's being killed, and it's like, there are good points on all sides of this. And, that, how do you even write one rule for every situation with something like that? Like, and
Well,
that,
actually, no, it's
and to me,
funny. That's why you have one law that takes care of all the situations. Like, for instance, if you create infant heartbeat laws, you take care of most of the situations and you have less to deal with. Like, for instance, rape. Well, if it's rape and a person reports it to the police and there's a hospital, well, they're probably going to be able to receive Plan B and they're not going to get pregnant. There's going to be very few situations. Then think about this. There's going to be dramatic or extreme criminal neglect, for, like, a situation where a woman's kidnapped and held for months and forced to get pregnant, and she gets rescued, and then, like this is like crazy their scenario, but say, like, she's like maybe certain far along in the pregnancy where she's past her first trimester.
right?
Well, at that point, that baby's is really life. It's viable, but she could be like, I was raped. I don't want to go through this anymore. What, get this out of me? That's a gray area where you gotta be like, oh, if it's done
Yeah,
before first trimester, did she right? Maybe not. Maybe, like, that's a moral argument. Make her go through that trauma. If it could be in the first trimester, is maybe a more compromise that somebody would have to. It's complicated, but the more we talk about it, I know where the argument should go. I know where the arguments people are having on all these issues. The more we do that, and the more we create, like that's what it is. We have to create Rick, Adam. We got to do referee by us. We come up with a solution,
Yeah.
throw them out there, and then we can
Yes.
stand by and march that by that.
See, sorry. And I love that. I love the Rick because that really, it's a good way for people to vote on the laws. I think that's really important. We're always going to need organization in society. We're always going to
And
need
that
to
really
keep.
was Roman, right? That was Romans, right?
Sorry. Roman was the first person I saw talking about it.
But honestly, but like I
before,
think,
I
but
don't
here's
know
the
how
thing.
long this.
You want to know something? I think I've traced some of the history of Yellow Vest, and I could be wrong, but this is what I gather. The guy who actually started Yellow
Yeah.
Vest is not it's not Roman. Roman picked up a concept that for them to create a solution for Yellow Vest and their protest. But the people going out to the streets was started by that one union dude who was like fuck shit, and they worked the train station worker, you know?
Yeah. Because I know I heard
So it's like
somewhere
actually
too.
like sorry, but it all
there were
came together.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I was doing some digging. I made a page a while back. I think Facebook actually shut it down, but I made a little Rick page in English, um, and I found in Ireland and in Australia, and I think it was Switzerland and a couple other countries all had movements trying to do these referendums before the Yellow Vest. And then I found in America at right around the beginning of the 1900s, I think it was something like 19 states also passed referendums, laws for the referendums, to
That's
fight
when I was
back
saying how
against
they
the same corporations.
did gerrymandering. That's what guys were.
Yeah, and so that idea. I don't know if any one person could really take credit for that. And even in listening, trace the idea of like direct. Did I lose you? Bring you back. Where is Joe? Come on, Joe. What? That's. Let's see if I can get him back on here. Let's try it one more time. Okay. Let me get Joe back on. If he's not going to go back on, I guess I'll continue with my thoughts. So, I can see if he can get on here. Basically, like with these referendums, you can trace them back to, ancient Greek democracy. The idea of direct democracy doesn't need to replace things necessarily, and that to me, like I've watched that building in France, the idea of giving the people the power to have say over each individual law. And, if I can't get Joe back on here, I think we'll close on that note. There's a man named Robert from Utah who is in one of those states where they have citizenless referendums. And one of the biggest problems that he brought to my attention was that essentially, while you have corrupt politicians who have, enormous power, the referendums aren't binding. So the people pass a referendum, they get it on the books, they vote. This is what the people want. The government doesn't. Corruption infects this good idea, and see that's something that really we're not seeing in France. So they're just trying to get these referendums. Here, that is something that, we have the National Citizens Initiative for Democracy. Um, I also got a great walkthrough today on the Movement for a People's Party, and there's a lot of stuff coming together behind the idea that, we all should be having more of a say in the laws being passed, and that those really are the common threads in, say, housing or the economy, and really everywhere. It's the laws being passed that affects everything. So if we want these RICs or these referendums to work, I you know I personally want to make a point of looking more at Utah, and that to me is really going to be a good case study for not just here in America, but globally, because we have some places that are doing this now and experiencing problems with it. We've got a lot of tech people here. Look at it, like finding a weakness in a system. I think Utah is and I'm sure this happens in some of those other states, but that's going to be the best way we can evaluate what works and what doesn't work with these referendums. So, if the people so choose to implement them, we're a step ahead of the game. And that's where this unity comes in, because the more we talk, and the more we learn from each other and share our experiences, uh, we're going to find that there is so much more experience in our collaborative than we were aware of. And the things I've learned from talking with just a small number of people in the last couple months is incredible. So, I guess I'll leave everyone with this note. Have a great night. I love all of you guys, those I know personally and those I don't. And I hope all of you, when you have some time, are just doing some research. There's a lot of opinions here. Many things do not submit as fact. We had a few hot button discussions, and that's what I hope we can all start doing more, and approach these hard issues with compassion and understanding for the people that don't agree with us, because we need that. We need to feel comfortable talking to people when it isn't comfortable. So, for now, have a good night, everyone, and I am sure we will be live somewhere very soon again.